This diagram is the structure of the motor unit. I'm going to explain how everything works. So first of all, there's the cytoplasm. This is where all the proteins are contained within the cell. Then there's a nucleus. This contains all the cell's DNA and controls the cell. Then there's the dendrites. This is the start of the process by it collecting the signals. Then there's the myelin and the myelin sheath. This electrically insulates the nerve, so there's no damage that can happen to it. Then there's the axon. This passes the signals down. There's the nodes of Ranvier. This is where the action potential jumps from node to node to travel down to the muscle fibres in the axon terminal. Then there's a synaptic end bulb. This contains synaptic vesicles. There's a neuromuscular junction. This takes electrical impulses from the nervous system and sends them down to the muscle fibres. There's the axon terminals, which contains the neurotransmitter substances, the substances used to do this process. And then right at the bottom, there's the muscle fibres, and this is what the whole process is used for.
So now I'm going to talk about how the impulse goes from the dendrites into the cell body, past the nucleus, and down the axon through the myelin sheath, across the nodes of Ranvier, which are these spaces here, and then into the motor unit. And then it's specifically what happens at the synaptic end bulbs at the neuromuscular junction, which is right here, as you can see drawn. So the dendrites receive the stimuli from sensory organs or other neurons. It's absorbed into the cell body and in the cytoplasm, and then it is released down the axon, which is this bit here, and into the myelin sheaths, which are like protective bubbles around them that are electrically insulate the positive charge being sent down. And then you get to the nodes of Ranvier, which is a space so that the impulse can jump across, because jumping it, as if it was travel all the way down, it'd be slower. These spaces in here, they allow for quicker movement to make the response times and times of these nerve cells transporting the impulse just make them quicker. Then it jumps down and it goes through the myelin sheath and the axon again, and then jumps, gets all the way down to here, where there is a very small and not very well drawn motor unit. And here you have the like I said, that is a muscle fibre. You have the axon terminals and then into the synaptic bulbs, which is then drawn here. Here you can tell I've focused in on the synaptic end bulb and the skeletal muscle fibre, just to really go into detail about how it actually gets across the synaptic cleft, which is this space here. As you can see, the action potential is coming into the synaptic end bulb through the axon terminal, which obviously is the end of a nerve cell. Got these two like blob things in the middle are mitochondria, and then you've got these two on the outside, which are the vesicles, which hold ACH, also known as acetylcholine. I think that's how you say it, or however you say it. What happens is when the action potential has come down the nerve cell and into the synaptic end bulb, the ATP is released by the mitochondria, and calcium is fed in. It's channeled in to the synaptic end bulb, and it triggers the release of the ACH from the vesicles. The ATP breakdown is used to reform and then to make ACH, which would then be released after the calcium has entered the synaptic end bulb. Then the ACH is binded to the edge of the end bulb, which is here, and then is released across the synaptic cleft and into the motor end plate. There's like these little indents here where they are like accepted, where they bind to, not accepted. And sodium goes into the skeletal muscle cell, and then the muscle action potential leaves through the sarcolemma. One small fact I did leave out and forget to mention is that acetylcholine, when the ACH reaches here, breaks down the ACH, which is what splits it into sodium and then the other muscle action potential, which carries on down and into the muscle action potential, which leads to the sliding filament theory, which Jaden will explain next.
Next, I'm going to be talking about how this structure enables muscle contraction. This happens by, firstly, the motor unit triggering the release of calcium from the two vesicles. The vesicles are a way of transport around the membrane. Then calcium binds to a troponin molecule. This is a protein within the cell. Tropomyosin molecules, this is another protein within the cell. On the actin filaments move. This exposes the actin's active sites. This energizes myosin cross bridges and bind the active sites. Energy from the ATP, which is released via myosin, is used to pull the actin filaments towards the centre of the sarcomere. This is the contraction within the muscle fibre, and this is known as a power stroke. Motor units and motor neurons. The function of a motor unit is to create muscle contraction. These are made up of motor neurons and the skeletal muscle fibres innervated by that motor neuron's axon terminals. The function of a motor neuron is to connect nervous system to muscles and organs. They also transmit impulses from the spinal cord to the skeletal and smooth muscles. Transmission of an action potential down the axon of a motor neuron. Action potentials travel down the neuronal axons in an ion cascade. These are ions with much more energy. Positive ions flow into the cell body, which triggers membrane channels at the start of an axon to open and let in more positive ions. This continues down the axon and creates axon potential.